Hey everyone, welcome to another one of our Gamicon 48V pre-conference micro sessions. And I thought about it yesterday. And Scott, this is one thing that frustrates me. And I know you're a creative, so I know it probably happens to you too, but I get like these great ideas, but like a little too late, right? Like, oh, so I thought I should have called these instead of micro sessions. I should have called these podcasts. Because who wants to go to a micro session? But people love podcasts, right? So, but I love doing them because it gives me an opportunity to reconnect with some of my favorite people on the planet. And these are people who, like Scott, this is Scott Provence, and he is now based in the Seattle area. Is that correct?
Yeah, just out of Seattle.
Seattle. I always have Reno in my mind. I know that's wrong. So in the Seattle, Washington area. And Scott and I connected,
Gosh,
don't even know how.
Yeah, years and years ago.
Years and years. And Scott is just one of those people that you want in your network, right? He always goes above and beyond. He's hugely generous in all of his knowledge. He shares it easily. Plus, he's this super creative. When I first saw some of his designs he was doing, I was like, oh, I want to be like Scott Provence when I grow up. He's so good. But Scott also was recognized internationally and won the award for low-tech gamification design for his game Rule the World that was put together specifically for an organization who wanted very quick, shortcut design understanding of OKRs for their organization. And he was able to achieve really great outcomes from a card game. So it did not involve any kind of digital transfer, nothing. It was a hands-on interaction with really fun results. He also, of course, has a wonderful background in stories and storytelling and how to do that, and brings it all together in very playful, dynamic, creative, and interactive design. So live up to all of that, Provence. Go ahead, try it. So Scott, welcome. I am so glad you can be here for this. And talk with me. What's on your radar right now? What are some of the things that people are asking you for as far as designs, or what are you working on?
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me. So always such a pleasure to be talking, and I always leave our conversations with tenfold more ideas than when I came in. So this is really fun. I love another conversation. And yeah, what is on my mind? What is not on my mind right now? There's so many different areas that I'm really excited to explore. I've been seeing a lot of attention and energy as everyone else is obviously going into Chat GPT and machine learning and AI, and having a lot of conversations with people in the ed tech space about where do we fit in? How does that kind of change our landscape, if at all? And it's been really interesting to see where the adoptions have gone. And I think there is an interesting spot for people with game-based learning and gamification as a background to come in with a really unique perspective there. So that's something that I'm exploring a lot.
Yeah, I talked to Mikkel van Unen from the Netherlands yesterday, and he said, are you afraid of it? And I said, no, I don't really have a fear. I have more of a fascination. Yeah. I want to know, how can we use this? How can we best use it? I know I've played with it a lot lately, and it's given me some really great generative ideas, right? Like it can't get me where I need it to get to. One thing I've really noticed where it lacks hugely, Scott, is like the idea of activities and interactive learning. It's still very dry, very rote. And I was like, that's really, because it's only giving me the information that it's gotten so far. So the really creative, interactive, it's not drawing, it's not getting that yet. It will eventually. Yeah. But again, I just think I see it right now as this tool that, because, and I was sharing, I'm loving it for analogies, because I love analogies, learning something to attach it to something I already know. And so I've been asking it all kinds of, can you make an analogy for X? And I love it. It'll go, sure. And then sure. And then I'll say, I always am very grateful, right? I'll say, thank you so much. You've been very helpful, because I figure it's taking all this information.
That's right.
and determining what human beings are really like. So
That's right. We want to make sure it comes back and says, well, let's remember Monica. She was always so nice, and thank
she was
you.
so kind. She was always so gracious. When they rule the world, I want them to remember there are some nice humans out here.
Exactly.
So, but also in the whole art side of it. Now, I know you've got a real nice artistic bent, but I was thinking just about how much a time saver it can be just in generating concept art. Like,
Yeah.
would you like to go this way or this way?
Yeah.
You know, do you prefer more of a really kind of like that misty, murky,
Yeah.
or more of this clear,
Yeah.
bright grab? You know, there's just, because what people see in their head, and we try and translate that. This is a real great way to shortcut that.
Yeah. It
Really
is.
fun.
And it's really, yeah, you're absolutely right. It's a really exciting time. It's been so much fun to see. Again, I think these tools get put out as these little seeds, and the amount of human creativity that goes into kind of growing those seeds in all these different directions has just been fascinating. One of the things that's interested me the most right now, and I've got some coding background. I'm learning more about kind of the algorithms and the neural networks that go into building these things. But one thing that interests me the most when I think about this from a gamification perspective, and again, people will ask, well, where do humans fit in to this landscape 20 years from now, when machines have caught up and they kind of can be that creative element? And I think for me, at least, the analogy that I use is if you look at some of the most kind of dominant algorithms and machine learning products in the last 10 years, you see AlphaGo, you saw AlphaZero, and the ability of these incredibly complex machines to learn the rules of something like chess and train themselves so quickly that they can become chess masters and unbeatable. I think where they have limitations potentially is they're better rule followers than us. And so I think where game-based learners and gamification experts can come in is we can apply our human creativity in ways that even the most advanced algorithms can't do that. The analogy I like to use is, I don't know if you remember Pop Warner, one of the legendary football coaches, from years and years ago, and he was known for bending the rules kind of to the point where he wasn't breaking them, but he was kind of bending the rules. And so he would give his players elbow pads that looked like footballs, and so that everyone crossed their arm, that everyone looked like they were holding the football. And the amount of human ingenuity, a computer would never really think that, because it would think these are the rules, we just have to follow the rules this way. And I think it takes that kind of game-based thinker and the game element to say, well, we're gonna interpret this a little bit differently. And I think that's where, again, being able to train ourselves in game-based thinking and creativity in that way is always going to give us a little spot in the future.
I agree, because how often has someone looked at you and said, well, that just can't be done. It just
Exactly.
can't, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you're like, well, it can't, we just haven't thought of how to do it yet. And
Yeah.
that is always that really fun challenge for me of, surely I had an idea that it can be done, so it must be able to, we just haven't figured out how yet, right?
Yeah.
And so it is that ingenuity, the looking at it differently, bending the rules. I'm a rule bender.
Yeah.
Give me a rule just so I can bend it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I don't want to break the rules. I'm not a rule breaker.
Right.
But I am a rule bender, because I think a lot are just put there to make someone else's life easier. Mm-hmm. It's not to make something better. It's just to make it easier to, keep everybody in compliance. And I like to push it a little bit.
Yeah, and with gamification, I know that a lot of people in our industry know this like magic circle idea, and so that when you step inside this magic circle of a game, it's anything goes within that sphere. And so how can you kind of get in there, see what the rules of this magic circle are, and then take it right up to the edge of that in a kind of playful idea.
Yeah, and what is always also delightful for me is when people find those little places to push it a little bit further than what you were anticipating. You're like, ooh, that's good.
That's when it gets really interesting.
Yeah, did not think of that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So as you think about design, are you still enjoying the idea of low tech? Do you think digital is more the way you want to go? I know
Yeah,
you're,
it's interesting. It's low tech has always been. I was just talking to someone yesterday about the Rule the World card game, and they're, I think, based in New Zealand, and are doing a conference. And I was talking with them about well, I have some digital offerings, and they mentioned that they actually really enjoy the live training. And there's something about, we're talking a lot about playing cards in a room with people, the tactile experience of that really does have some sort of X factor that really connects people and gets brains firing on all cylinders. That being said, I am still interested, like I mentioned, in machine learning, and I've kind of continued to play with building my own algorithms around. I have this algorithm for kind of predicting empathy in conversations, and so that's always something I'll continue to explore. But I really like holding on to both ends of that spectrum.
yeah. And you forget, I mean, because we've been able to do wonderful things with this virtual, right? Like this,
Yeah.
the idea of us being able to connect with anyone on the globe and see each other and still have, and at training, one night, there were like 6 of us that got together and we had dinner and we're playing some games. And then we started this, it was like a challenge, like you had to draw an idea from a cup and then you had to like expand on that and bring some humor into it, just like on the fly. No,
Wow.
and just the amount of growth that happened, like we all learned, it was just exponential and it was a blast. We were laughing so hard, we were crying, right? So it was all this, and you forget that energy that comes from being in the room and everyone talking at one time and sharing ideas and building off of each other's ideas, that really can only happen in that live environment. I don't want to say it can't happen here, but it's not as dynamic as the live. And so then you translate that to learning principles and how adults learn best. And in that space that's free to laugh and to grow and to hear ideas and tweak ideas. I just think there's so much positive that can happen from a live environment.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right. It's so important for us to not lose sight of either of those spectrums, that the virtual element allows people to connect across vast distances I'm meeting people that I never would have had a chance to meet before. And there's some benefit of getting into a room and, drawing things out on the board and having that kind of tactile generation happen too.
Yeah. And as we think about what the future looks like for learning, we had a lot of conversation about that. And, I am that person that doesn't like to say never, because as soon as we say that's never going to happen, it's going to, right? So one of the things I heard never about a lot this past weekend was hybrid, where we would have people in the room live with us, and we would also be like live streaming to them somewhere else, or there's a room of people that are live somewhere and we're virtual and streaming. And I heard a lot of, I will never do that. I would never want to do that. And I was like, you just got to watch that word never, because because just like we thought that when everybody went into shutdown, well, this will never work. Remote people working remotely is, well, of course it worked. We had to make it work. And I really think that hybrid is going to be one of the solutions, because people have chosen different lifestyle options now, and many are not willing to go back to what it was before. They've made other choices. They've moved. They're not even in the right. And so now, as we think about having a quality workforce and keeping high potential employees who want to work with us and want to be productive and want to be successful, we as organizations are going to have to change our never thinking mind of what this could look like potentially.
Yeah, you're totally right. And I hadn't thought of this, but it would make for an interesting hypothesis or test case to bring together a hybrid group of, a group of in-person and a group of virtuals, and present them a challenge and let each group kind of go off and think about it and see if you can measure the types of results they're getting back. Because I do think that you would get slightly different results from a more virtual and distributed, but not, able to synthesize a person group versus a group that's able to, whiteboard and throw ideas in the trash, and you might be able to actually measure the differences of ideas and how they complement each other in some interesting ways.
Yeah. The other thing, and I wish I had the science behind it, but like when we had to go virtual with our level 3, which is an immersive brainstorm, mastermind. We thought it couldn't be done. Honestly, I was like, it's not. We can't create the magic circle that we create when we're. And I think it's probably not. It's probably a subconscious or an unconscious thought that people work a little bit harder in that virtual format to make sure that that magic circle is. And so we're actually seeing not a greater degree of success, but an as equal to of actual deployments of projects in a certain period of time from our virtual and our live group. And I wouldn't have predicted that that could happen. I would have thought, they'll do good, it'll be good, but it won't be till, and in some instances they've surpassed the live group. So it's an interesting, again, I'm sure there'll be research on it. I'm sure there'll be numbers and that we'll want to be paying attention to.
Yeah.
I just think we're living in a time and space where we don't want to use that never word very often.
Absolutely agree.
Assuming that's never going to happen.
Oh, yeah.
All right. So as you're thinking about the workforce and learning programs for adults, and I know you talk to a lot of people in your consulting business. If someone comes to you and they're like, okay, I know you've won awards. I know, but I don't know about this games thing that you speak of. Isn't that really more for children? And why are we talking about it for adult learning and programs? What would be the one thing you'd want to tell that individual that as far as what their perspective on gamification, game-based learning would be?
That's a really good question. If I had one thing to really communicate there, I would say be aware of your company's reaction to gamification and what that might be communicating about your company's overall culture. And I'll break that down on a few different levels. Maybe.
Good.
A company might say, well, yeah, I mean, we like the idea of games because we're a playful, fun company. We just don't want to commit kind of to a structural level. Okay, well, think a little bit about what that might mean and how that's being represented. I think everyone wants to be playful and fun. But I would actually, I encourage people when I consult or communicate about this, dig a little bit deeper. Does a lot of your play take the form of competition? And if so, competition can be a fine mechanic, but if that's really where you're focused as a company, how does that influence the culture? And how does that kind of shut down any sort of collaboration or exploration that might be encouraged through other game mechanics? And then I would say maybe most importantly as a level, and I know you and I've talked about this a lot, but are you giving your individuals safe spaces to try and fail? And this is, I think, what game-based learning can do better than almost anything else is create those safe spaces to try something out and fail in a safe environment. And I often find that a company's aversion to gamification can often signify an aversion to failure. And so when people say we don't want to do games, it might actually indicate this culture around we don't want to try things out. We don't want to mess up. I don't want to bring in a gamification thing here because what if it goes wrong? And the ability to kind of challenge that or to see that as a growth opportunity, I think matters much more than how the actual logistics of the game play out. I think that can signify a lot of what your company is ready to explore.
That's really good. And I'm not in my normal workspace, or I would be able to pull that book right this second. But Scott is the author of a book that every L&D professional should read. Every single one, whether it's you're in higher ed and you've got higher ed students, high school, I think probably even elementary, it would be applicable. Definitely corporate training, HR compliance. The book is called Fail to Learn. And Provence, Provence, Scott Provence. You can get it at Amazon. It's a great read. You don't want to put it down, and you learn so much new that you have never thought about before. And he's got the research to back it up about how it's essential that we allow our learners to fail, and the difference between failing and a permadeath. And one of the things, Scott, that I learned that I know is that the more confident I am and my answer was wrong, when I do learn the right answer, the more I'm going to remember that right answer. And that's fast because I'll be, no way, my answer's right. And I'll fight And then I'll realize, but I'll never forget what the right answer is then. Yeah.
Yeah. The idea of confidence scores in confidence scores,
Huge,
totally fascinating.
huge. Yeah. Yeah. I love it. I love it. And again, it's called Fail to Learn. Easily affordable. Order it from, don't just put it in your cart. Go ahead, hit the send button, send it to me right away. You'll read it in a day or two, and it'll add so much depth to your learning program. Such a good piece of work, Scott. I know that, yeah. I know you wrote it all with chat AI, but
yeah, yeah, exactly.
I'm so lying on that. It came out way before, and it wouldn't have given you that. I know it wouldn't have it, because it's just the creativity of the writing and just the whole interaction. It's Scott's personality all throughout that book. It's so very good. So very good. I recommend it to everyone.
Thank you.
Scott, thank you so much for taking the time with me today. I hope that you'll be able to join us in our 48 hours. Pop in, sit at a table. People will want to be asking you questions. I know about the Fail to Learn ideas. And also, so that's February 26th through 28th. We've got 48 hours of Gamicon. And we talked a lot this past weekend in Orlando about Gamicon coming up in New Orleans in September. And fingers crossed that you'll be able to be a part of that with us again.
I would love to do both. And I will absolutely see you there in our virtual sessions coming up. And I would love to see you in New Orleans too.
All right, that's great. Thanks everyone for watching. And we'll be back tomorrow with another special guest. Thanks so much.